I always believed my marriage was unshakable, a fortress built on laughter, late-night confessions, and Sunday mornings spent in bed. But lately, that fortress felt more like a fragile shell, each excuse Andrew gave me like a crack splintering across the walls. At first, I didn't want to see it. I held on to the fleeting warmth of his touch, the half-smiles he threw my way as he left for work. I told myself we were just busy, that life got in the way. But deep down, I felt the shift, a slow, cold distance that words alone couldn't hide. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying every odd moment, every excuse he gave that didn't sit right in my gut. So I did the one thing I never thought I'd have to do. I followed him. I parked a block away from that little cafe, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might drown out the truth. My hands were shaking as I walked closer, the neon lights casting a harsh glow on what I already knew. And there they were, Andrew and Mara, heads close together, sharing a secret I was never meant to know. Seeing them there, I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. My world shrank down to the two of them, laughing softly in that cozy booth while I stood frozen outside. In that moment, the betrayal wasn't just his. It was mine too. I realized then that I had a choice, to let this destroy me or to take back control. And as I turned away, my mind was already working, weaving a plan that would make sure I wasn't the only one to suffer. In the days that followed, Bianca felt as though she was living in a fog, every breath weighted with the reality of what she'd seen. She still played the part of the dutiful wife, her smile practiced and her voice steady. But behind her calm eyes, her heart was a battlefield, each beat echoing with questions and the sting of betrayal. She couldn't bear to ask him outright. She already knew the answer. So she watched him instead, taking note of every new lie that slid so easily from his lips. She gathered each detail like puzzle pieces, determined to see the full picture before she made her move. Mornings felt colder now, each sunrise a reminder that her perfect life was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. Bianca spent her days tracing the timeline of their marriage, flipping through memories like brittle pages of an old book. She thought of the way Andrew used to look at her, as though she was the center of his world. She wondered when that changed. In those quiet moments, she allowed herself to grieve, to feel the pain of knowing that the man she loved was a stranger wearing her husband's face. But she wouldn't let that pain consume her. Instead, she let it fuel her. Bianca realized that she didn't have to be the victim of this story. She could be its author. The heartbreak didn't break her spirit. It sharpened it, honed it into something fierce and unyielding. She knew that Andrew thought he could keep his secret buried, that she'd be too broken to fight back, but he was wrong. Bianca had already decided. She wouldn't let their betrayal end her story. She'd rewrite it herself. Bianca didn't flinch when she caught herself rehearsing conversations in the mirror, testing how her voice would sound when she finally confronted the truth. There was a strange sort of power in that quiet rehearsal, a way to take back the control that Andrew's lies had stolen from her. She pictured the way he would stammer, how his eyes would dart for an escape that wouldn't come. She imagined that moment not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. If she was going to break free, she had to own the moment he thought she'd never have. At night, sleep didn't come easily. Bianca would lie awake, tracing the familiar shape of her ring on her finger, feeling both the weight of it and the emptiness it symbolized. The memories of them, the laughter, the whispered dreams, felt like echoes of a life she'd outgrown. She wondered how many nights Andrew had spent with Mara while she waited at home, hope burning like a quiet candle. That thought no longer made her heart ache. Instead, it ignited something sharper, a resolve that refused to die. By the time the sun rose again, Bianca wasn't just a woman scorned, she was a woman transformed, her heartbreak no longer a wound but a weapon. She told herself that she wouldn't be the only one to suffer in silence. And though she didn't know exactly how yet, she was certain of one thing. She wasn't finished. Their betrayal had cracked her open, but it also set her free to write her own ending. Bianca's days took on a quiet intensity, like a puzzle coming together piece by piece. She spent hours researching Mara, scrolling through social media posts and company updates, memorizing every small detail that might matter. Each discovery felt like a tiny victory, a step closer to understanding the woman who had stolen her husband's attention. But this wasn't just about Mara anymore. It was about the truth. Bianca realized quickly that Mara wasn't just the other woman. She was playing her own game, and Bianca needed to know the rules. Late one evening, Bianca traced Mara's digital footprints all the way to her cozy suburban house, a place that looked so different from the betrayal it hid. The lawn was perfect, the curtains always drawn just right, as if Mara believed that careful control could keep the truth at bay. Bianca's fingers tightened around the steering wheel as she parked nearby, her mind racing with questions. Who was Mara outside of those stolen moments with Andrew? What lies was she weaving in her own home? It didn't take long for Bianca to find her answer. She saw the man who opened the door for Mara every evening, his smile tired but warm. Lucas. The name slipped into Bianca's mind like a key turning a lock, opening a door to possibilities she hadn't even dared to consider. In that instant, she knew she wasn't alone in her heartbreak. Mara was playing the same game in two different homes. And Bianca was done playing by their rules. Bianca's curiosity shifted from a quiet ache to a determined flame. She watched Lucas from afar, the way he kissed Mara goodbye in the mornings and returned home each night with the same weary smile. She wondered if he had noticed the lies creeping into his marriage, the small cracks in the foundation that she herself had missed. Lucas seemed like a man carrying a weight he couldn't quite name, a man who deserved to know the truth just as much as she did. Bianca's mind spun with possibilities, her thoughts weaving together into a plan that felt almost too perfect. She didn't rush it. Bianca knew that trust couldn't be forced. It had to be earned, especially with someone whose heart had been bruised as deeply as hers. So she started small, almost by accident, or at least that's how she made it seem. A chance meeting at the grocery store, a polite nod in the park. Each interaction was carefully measured, like a chess move she'd been perfecting in her head for weeks. Lucas's eyes, kind and searching, met hers with a flicker of recognition. In those glances, Bianca saw the reflection of her own pain, and a silent understanding that only betrayal can bring. As days turned into weeks, the edges of their connection softened. Bianca found herself speaking to him with the same gentle tone she once reserved for Andrew, though this time there were no illusions. She didn't tell Lucas everything, not yet. Instead, she let him feel that she understood, that she saw the cracks in his world because she had lived them too. She wasn't there to expose his pain. She was there to share it, to make sure that Mara and Andrew wouldn't be the only ones to decide how this story ended. Bianca's friendship with Lucas grew slowly, like ivy creeping along a brick wall, patient, deliberate, and unstoppable. She would meet him for coffee on quiet afternoons, each conversation a blend of casual laughter and unspoken truths. Lucas talked about his work, the small joys he found in the everyday grind, but Bianca could hear the cracks in his voice, the weight he carried without saying a word. In those moments, she found herself offering not just comfort, but connection, a reminder that he wasn't alone in the lies that had tangled their lives. There were times when Bianca wondered if she was being cruel, weaving her presence into Lucas's life with an ease that felt almost natural. But each time she saw the sadness in his eyes, the way he hesitated before mentioning Mara's name, she knew she wasn't doing this out of spite alone. It was about balance, about reclaiming the power that had been stolen from them both. Lucas never asked too many questions, and Bianca never offered too many answers. It was an unspoken truce, a quiet bond forged from the wreckage of their shared betrayals. By the time Bianca left those meetings, she could feel the quiet triumph of her plan taking shape. She knew that Mara and Andrew thought they were the only players in this game, but Bianca and Lucas were rewriting the rules, one conversation at a time. And though she didn't know exactly how this would end, she was certain of one thing: the next move was hers to make. Bianca didn't let the guilt touch her as she and Lucas grew closer. Each time she leaned in to brush his arm or let her laughter linger a beat too long, she felt the careful precision of her plan unfolding. They were no longer two people reeling from heartbreak. They were allies, each playing a part in a dance neither of them had asked for. Bianca didn't flinch at the heat in Lucas's gaze or the way his hand would hover near hers when they said goodbye. She let it happen, let the chemistry spark and crackle like a fire she'd always known was waiting to be lit. Their first kiss wasn't planned, at least not out loud. It happened on a night when the air felt too heavy with unspoken words, and the soft glow of the city lights blurred the lines between friendship and something more. Bianca felt her breath catch as Lucas closed the distance between them, his lips brushing hers with a tenderness that felt almost reverent. In that moment, she wasn't thinking about Andrew or Mara. She was thinking about the warmth of Lucas's touch and the way it made her feel alive again. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a promise. Afterwards, Bianca let herself lean into the rush of it all. She knew that this was more than just revenge. It was a reclamation. Every touch, every whispered word, was a piece of herself that she was taking back from the wreckage of her marriage. She wasn't naive enough to think this would be easy. But as Lucas's breath mingled with hers, she realized that she didn't care. She wasn't just playing the victim anymore. She was rewriting the story. And this time, she was the one holding the pen. The days that followed were a blur of secret meetings and stolen glances, each moment heavy with the unspoken thrill of what they were doing. Bianca found herself drawn to Lucas in ways she hadn't expected. The way he listened to her with a quiet intensity, the way his hands trembled ever so slightly when they touched. There was no pretending here, no polite smiles to cover the truth. In those moments, Bianca felt the honesty of it all, the raw edges of desire and need that pulsed between them like a silent confession. And for the first time in so long, she didn't feel like she was just surviving. She felt like she was finally living. Every meeting became a chess move in their private game, each word a carefully chosen piece. Bianca would laugh at Lucas's jokes, leaning in just enough for him to catch the scent of her perfume. She noticed how his eyes would darken when she touched his hand, how he'd pause for just a heartbeat before speaking. It was a dance of glances and whispers, a push and pull that left them both breathless. And yet, beneath the surface, Bianca felt the steel of her resolve. This wasn't just about passion. It was about taking back her power, one deliciously deliberate step at a time. Lucas never questioned the line they were crossing. If he felt the weight of it, he didn't say. Bianca could see it in the way he looked at her. A silent understanding that this was more than just an affair. It was a reckoning, a chance to turn the tables on the people who had taken them for fools. And as Bianca watched Lucas's eyes soften every time she smiled, she knew she was no longer the woman who had been betrayed. She was the woman who was rewriting the rules of the game. As their affair deepened, Bianca found herself savoring every stolen moment with Lucas. There was an intimacy in their laughter, a softness in the way he reached for her hand that made her feel like she was finally being seen. In those moments, the shadows of betrayal seemed to fade, replaced by a warmth that felt like a promise she had been waiting for her entire life. Each night they spent together was a quiet rebellion, a testament to the fact that they weren't broken, no matter how much their spouses had tried to convince them otherwise. But even as she reveled in the thrill of their connection, Bianca never lost sight of her purpose. She knew that this wasn't just about her and Lucas. It was about taking control of a story that had been written for her by other people's lies. Every kiss was a reminder that she had a choice, that she could decide what her life would look like. And in the curve of Lucas's smile and the way he whispered her name, she found the strength to keep going, even when the weight of it all threatened to pull her under. Bianca didn't know what would come next, but she no longer feared it. She had already survived the worst kind of heartbreak, and now she was ready for whatever came after. She and Lucas were no longer just victims of betrayal. They were co-conspirators in a story of their own making. And as Bianca closed her eyes and let herself be held, she knew the next chapter was waiting, and this time she'd be the one to turn the page. The night felt electric, the air pulsing with the kind of tension that makes your breath catch in your throat. Bianca had known it would come to this. The moment when everything they'd been building, every secret glance and stolen kiss, would burst into the open like a thunderclap. She waited in the living room, her heart steady and her mind clear. She didn't feel fear anymore. She felt ready to see the look in Mara's eyes, to watch the betrayal she'd lived with reflected back at her in every flicker of disbelief. She heard the car pull up outside, the low murmur of voices that had once sent a chill down her spine. Tonight, though, Bianca felt only calm. She smoothed her dress, the fabric cool and smooth against her skin, a small comfort in the storm she had created. Lucas stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back, a silent show of support that made her lips curve into a slow smile. In that moment, they weren't just allies in a game of revenge. They were partners, bound by a truth that no one else could ever take from them. The door opened with a soft creak, and Mara's silhouette paused in the doorway, a gasp catching in her throat. Bianca didn't rush to speak. She let the silence settle, let the shock of what Mara was seeing wash over her. And when she finally turned her head, Her voice was as smooth and deliberate as the plan that had brought her here. "You didn't think you'd have all the fun, did you?" she said, each word a gentle knife twisting in the air. In that instant, Bianca knew she had taken back everything that had been stolen from her, and she wasn't finished yet. Mara stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes darting from Bianca to Lucas and back again. The disbelief on her face was almost beautiful in its rawness, a mirror image of the confusion and pain Bianca had once carried in secret. Andrew stepped in behind her, his jaw tightening, his mouth opening like he was searching for some half-baked excuse. But Bianca didn't flinch. She watched them both with an almost detached curiosity, as if she were seeing them for the first time. Two people caught in their own tangled web, no longer in control of the narrative they'd spun. For a long moment, the room felt like it was holding its breath. Lucas shifted beside her, his expression unreadable, but steady. Bianca could feel the quiet power in that stillness, the way their presence together was its own kind of confession. She didn't raise her voice or cry. She didn't need to. Everything she wanted to say was already written in the way she held Lucas's gaze, the way her hand rested on his shoulder like a claim. Andrew's face paled as he realized that the man he'd never thought twice about was now the one standing beside his wife. Mara's lips parted, a question trembling there, but Bianca spoke first. "Funny, isn't it?" she said softly, her tone almost playful. "How secrets have a way of catching up with us." Her words hung in the air, a challenge and a promise all at once. She wasn't here to beg for answers or forgiveness. She was here to show them what it felt like to be left behind, and to remind them that she was no longer the one left out in the cold. Bianca could see the way Mara's shoulders stiffened, the flush of embarrassment creeping up her neck. Andrew reached for her hand, but she pulled away, her eyes never leaving Bianca's. It was a moment of perfect clarity. The tangled lies, the half-truths, all laid bare in the stillness of that living room. Bianca let them sit in it, feeling the weight of their discomfort settle over the room like a heavy fog. She didn't offer them an explanation or a way out. She wasn't here to make it easier for them. She was here to claim her freedom. Lucas shifted his weight, his thumb brushing lightly against the small of Bianca's back, a silent promise that she wasn't alone in this final act. Bianca turned to him, her smile soft and genuine in a way that no performance could ever be. In that exchange, there was no shame or doubt, only the quiet understanding that they were rewriting their stories together. And when she turned back to Andrew and Mara, she saw the fear in their eyes. Not just fear of exposure, but fear of the woman standing in front of them. The woman they had underestimated for far too long. Bianca didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. She let the moment stretch out, a silent testament to the power she had taken back. Then, with a calm certainty, she reached for Lucas's hand and took a step forward, leaving Andrew and Mara standing there in the wreckage of their own making. She wasn't the woman who had been betrayed anymore. She was the woman who had become the final move in a game they never even knew they were playing. In the days that followed, Bianca felt an unfamiliar lightness in her chest, like she could finally breathe again without the weight of secrets crushing her. She packed her things in quiet determination, each box a symbol of her resolve. There was no need for tearful goodbyes or heated arguments. She didn't owe Andrew any more of herself, not after everything he had taken. With every item she placed in a box, she felt another layer of their shared life slip away, leaving behind only what was truly hers. She wasn't running from the past. She was claiming her future. The divorce papers were already signed, the ink still drying as she walked out of the house she had once thought would be her forever. Bianca didn't look back as she shut the door behind her, the final click of the lock echoing like a punctuation mark on a chapter she was done reading. The world outside felt new and bright, the kind of clean slate she hadn't dared to dream of when the betrayal was still fresh in her veins. In the silence of her new apartment, she found a peace that felt almost foreign, and she welcomed it like an old friend. On that first morning in her new space, Bianca brewed a cup of coffee and let the steam curl around her face. The bitterness on her tongue was a small price to pay for the freedom she had fought so hard to claim. She looked out the window at the city below, her heart calm and certain. This was her life now, not one built on lies or false promises, but on the quiet, steady strength she had discovered within herself. And for the first time in years, she felt like the woman she was always meant to be. Bianca's days became a gentle rhythm, morning light spilling across her new kitchen, the comforting sound of her own footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. She found a strange kind of joy in the simplicity of it all, in the way she could take up space without apology. Her heart no longer raced with the fear of what she might find in the shadows. Instead, it beat steady and strong, each pulse a quiet affirmation that she had survived. She knew that the wounds would take time to heal, but for now it was enough just to feel free. She didn't see Lucas again right away. There were no promises exchanged, no need for declarations of what might come next. They both understood that what they shared had been real, a flicker of something true in the middle of so much falsehood. Bianca didn't mourn the end of it. She let it live in the soft ache of her memories, a reminder that she was capable of passion and fire, even in the face of heartbreak. It wasn't about needing someone else to feel whole. It was about knowing she could stand on her own. Some nights, when the city was quiet and the world seemed to pause around her, Bianca would let herself think of all the ways her life had changed. She'd remember the girl who once thought her marriage was unbreakable, and she'd smile at how wrong she had been. In those quiet moments, she didn't feel bitterness or regret. She felt something deeper, something steadier. She felt her own power, and she knew she would never let it be taken from her again. In the weeks that followed, Bianca started to rebuild, not just her life, but her sense of self. She painted the walls of her new apartment in soft, warm colors, each brush stroke a small act of defiance against the gray that had once filled her days. She spent afternoons wandering the city, rediscovering corners she'd forgotten existed, each step a gentle promise to herself that this world was still hers to claim. With every breath of fresh air, she let the past fade a little more, like an old photograph left in the sun. Bianca found herself smiling at strangers, feeling the easy warmth of connection without the weight of betrayal in her chest. She learned to savor the small things, the bitter bite of good coffee, the rustle of leaves outside her window, the quiet satisfaction of a day well spent. There was no rush to fill the emptiness. She knew now that space was something to be cherished, not feared. In that emptiness, she found possibility, the chance to build something honest and whole, something that was hers alone. And so, on that final morning, she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a quiet certainty in her chest. She didn't need to look back at the life she'd left behind. She already knew how that story ended. This was her beginning, bright and unburdened. Bianca took one last sip of her coffee, the taste rich and satisfying, and let herself smile. She took the betrayal that once threatened to define her and turned it into the start of her freedom. And she never looked back.